Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? My name's Lauren Vickery. I am the Senior Vice President for Production here at CAP. Welcome. Thanks for coming on a pretty glorious day outside. And I know sometimes being inside on an afternoon like this is one of those where, should I, shouldn't I? But I think this is worth it. I hope you all are as excited as I am. I'm going to do a very brief introduction. I think everybody's really here to see Melissa and Mary, but I want to take you back to about 25 years ago, next week. And for those of you who were around then, you were probably waiting to watch this show, especially if you're a DC person. I can remember that it was the last of kind of appointment TV, which was when people actually waited around at, 8:59 on Wednesday night, because it came on 9 o'clock every Wednesday. And I remember there were a lot of people in DC talking about this, the pilot, how excited they were about it. To say it exceeded expectations is pretty much an understatement. No show like it before or since. And I think that while the show had a number of reasons why it was incredibly successful, first and foremost, I would say it's the cast and the actors. It was an extraordinary cast. Illustrative, our two guests today. They wrote the book, What's Next? A Backstage Pass to the West Wing. It's cast and crew, importantly, and its enduring legacy of service. And the reason it's a mouthful of a title is pretty important because it's not just the definitive behind the scenes for the West Wing that had never been written, much less anybody attempt to write it that's part of the actual cast and crew. It actually does justice to the series, which is really difficult to do. 600 pages, and they told me they could have written a second book with everything they had to leave on the cutting room floor, which is kind of extraordinary. But most importantly, it does justice to the central theme of the show, of the people involved in the show, and of Mary and Melissa, which is the theme of service. And I'm very happy to say they just hit 4 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. So very happy about that. Yay. Sorry, I should have waited. Should have waited for you to say that to them when they actually walked up. So without any other further ado, two very badass, beautiful women who are not just brilliant actors, but incredible activists, producers, you name it. They have been pros in multiple slashes, actor, activist, producer, slash. But now they can say they're New York Times bestselling authors as well. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to welcome Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack.
They told me I could wear jeans. I did bring fancy pants.
No, and I said she looked great, and I said, I like your jeans.
Okay, sorry.
I just sat down on my notes. I did. I was so worried about not tripping over the big shoe. Thank you, first off, for coming. I know you guys are really busy. They have 3 events today alone. For those of you who don't know, they're doing shows left and right. So this is really a treat for Kat.
This is the fun part.
Well,
Yeah,
The
writing was
the-
less fun part.
yeah, exactly. I remember you.
But we're
telling
also
me.
happy to be here. We love CAP. I've been a huge fan of CAP for a long time and huge fan of yours. So, and I
Wow.
see the great work that you
Where's
do.
my boss? Is my boss around? Thank you. Yeah,
Love Lauren Vickery.
that's why I invited her. Did you not know that secretly? Yeah. So thank you for taking the time. Unbelievably busy, I know that. Can you, even though I know the story, can you start at the beginning of how the book came about? There are very funny anecdotes along the way that I know about that deal with cake and alcohol and various people getting involved that claim credit, but I'd love to hear how it all started.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who claim credit and
Yes.
also can get some blame as well. But Kevin Walling, who's here today somewhere, who lives here in DC, and I also live here in DC, had told me that his book agents would like me to write a behind the scenes of the West Wing book. And I did not feel that that was my book to write. And I also left Hollywood to advance justice system reform at an organization called All Rise, and I've been there for over a decade. And I said anything that I do has to lift up that work and the work of Mary's and all of our other friends. So cut to a couple days later, I went to Los Angeles. It was Allison Janney's birthday party, November 2019. And Mary and I are talking and
Drinking
having cake
and drinks. We were overserved by Allison Janney that is definitely what
So again,
happened.
her fault. And Mary and I have been sort of the two, I would say, in our friend group of the West Wingers who, I guess, boss everybody around to do different service projects. And then everybody else does too, and to support the causes and issues that we care about. And then we all support theirs too. So Mary and I were talking, and Mary said, well, if we do it through the lens of service, this book, we can really do something. And
Yeah, we thought if there was a way to write a book for the fans, like for the real wingnuts, and we have great access because we were on the show. So we thought, and we knew the cast would be excited to do it because we sort of love to do things together. So we thought, wow, we're going to really be able to, hopefully, if we don't mess it up, we can deliver something that the fans will really enjoy. And at the same time, be able to shine a light on all these great organizations that the cast is passionate about.
And everyone was excited about that piece of it too. And we, were able to luckily sell the book, and it was just at the beginning of COVID. So we were also able to do all of our interviews, and we did well over 100 interviews during Zoom, on Zoom during COVID. So
4 years.
Almost
Well,
5.
almost 5, because Allison's birthday was November 2019, and we really got to work.
To me, it's amazing that the show itself, and for those of you who haven't heard this before, Aaron Sorkin, who is one of the creators of the show, or the creator, I don't know if you
The
say
creator.
the creator. I wasn't sure if you say the creator, has said that the series is a love letter to service. And I remember you early on saying to me, the book is a love letter to the show and service, that it's both. And that you were very concerned about making sure that that was what the book focused on and featured. It wasn't just, we're going to tell you some stories about the West Wing, which it does. And it's amazing. And I learned a bunch of things I didn't know, even though I'm an admitted wingnut. But that's the thing that I love the best, is reading each of your stories. And remember, I said to you, there were things I didn't even realize about your service, which was amazing. Tell us, if you can go back a little bit to how you ended up on the show, your stories about auditioning or coming to the show, and what you thought, like the early impressions and early feelings you had when you started out with the show.
I was doing an arc on ER, and John
Remember
Wells
that.
produced ER, and he also produced The West Wing. So I
And
was
China Beach, phenomenal show.
He's
my
done a
favorite.
ton of yes.
That's when I
China
first
Beach
fell
was
in love
great.
with him.
But so I was doing this arc on ER, and he said, well, why don't you come join ER after I finished the arc? He said, why don't you just come on as Noah Wiley's love interest now? And I was like, yeah, sign me up. But unfortunately, I had already signed up for another show called K Street, and it was shooting here, actually. Yes.
Clooney.
Yes. And Soderbergh and George Clooney. And it was fun, but unfortunately it made me unavailable for ER. So when that finished, when K Street had run its course, John Wells called and said, would you like to join the West Wing? Which is another great call to get. So I said yes.
So not unfortunately that you weren't available for ER.
So I guess it
Fortunately
worked
for
out.
us.
Although in the writing of our book, we got access to the casting director, John Levy, who did such a beautiful job casting the show, but he gave us his casting folders to use and look through, which was
Nobody should see
insane.
those. They're
I know I
really-
definitely should not have been seeing them. Like I was like, I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was incredible. And some of it's in the book. We actually got permission and put some of it in the book, like brainstorming
Like
lists
pictures
for,
of it.
for POTUS and just a bunch of stuff. But in looking through 4 massive binders of stuff, I saw my name. And it was, 25 years ago. And I saw my name and it said Mary McCormack. And then it said, not interested in series television.
But remember when that was? That was a time when actors who were doing movies were not doing television. It's a different world now. And it was also a different world in terms of the types of shows that were on television. A political drama had never been successful, never on network television prior to The West Wing. So it actually was quite a risk for, I mean, in a certain sense, it was a risk for the network to do it, but in another sense, it wasn't, because it was Aaron Sorkin's brilliant script. I mean, it was undeniably brilliant script. I had never read anything like that before or since.
It's kind of like, it seems like a no-brainer now because we all know Sorkin inside and out and how great he is and how great the show was. But one of the things that really struck me in reading the book was how much went into, and you could see it in the show, the production values, the sets, the different locations, et cetera. That was a lot of money on something that had never been successful before, never proven. which-
Absolutely.
But tell me some of your favorites from the list, since you mentioned the list. What were the really crazy names that you were like, oh my God, they considered so-and-so for president?
Steinbrenner,
Yeah, Steinbrenner.
Carvel,
president. Yeah. James Carville.
non-actors.
Yeah. Sydney
This is
Poitier.
crazy. It's
It's
like someone
bonkers.
was high. For
And then other ones that were good too, like Hal Holbrook, who had the part for 12 hours and then, didn't.
There's
but,
more crazy names than not. It's just a nutty list. And then there's a list of actresses, and Stockard Channing's on that list
Yeah.
to play POTUS. So like it's really interesting because your mind, you just sort of imagine each person doing that part.
And it was really fun to go through John Levy's cast. I mean, we were so lucky to have access to the things we had access to.
Yeah, we include
Yeah.
a lot of that in the book, although I wish we'd had more room for
Yeah.
photos because there's the,
I mean, there's a lot of photos in the book, not in the galley.
oh yeah, there are a lot.
But in the actual book, there are 2
Yeah.
inserts of photos, and there are private personal photos. Like you had to drive around and scan them. They're not, it was pre-cell phone 25 years ago.
Yep. Yeah.
The other thing about the pictures that I really liked was it's not a whole bunch of promotional photos that you could dig up somewhere. These are
No, there are
personal
literally are personal.
photos, which I really liked about it. There were so many things like that that were gems where you really thought through, we're going to make this book something special and different and not just take Warner Brothers promotion.
Yeah, I
pics.
think because we were on the show, it is a different level of
Yeah.
wing nuttiness.
Right. Versus somebody outside writing the
Yeah, like a journalist writing, it would be a very different book than this book. And we really sort of leaned into what we had to offer versus what someone else would have to offer, which also would be a great book, but this is what we had.
Not as great.
No, of course not. But the service element too, you brought that up, and I
It's on my card.
just
for the next question.
structurally, it was an interesting journey in terms of that, because originally I think, people had mentioned doing a section on service, and we're like, nope, we don't want people flipping through it and skipping over the service section. So we really weave it through, and it makes a lot of sense. Everyone gets an origin story, like how they got on the show, and they also have a service story, and they get to highlight 2 of the issues and causes they care about most at this moment. But everybody in our friend group and the cast really does care a lot about lifting up different issues and causes, because we've been so lucky to have the ability to do that because we were so lucky to be on the show.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the bat signal? I really like the text chain.
The
Speaking of
text
service,
chain. We are really close, annoyingly close. Like it's weird because I mean, I think it's fair to say it doesn't happen like that generally on cast. So even if you make one friend that lasts, that's pretty special. But to have a whole group is really unusual. And we're all on a text chain. And the text chain is mostly, well, giving each other, making fun of Josh Molina or calling each other to a service project. Like I need 3 people to show up, or I need all of you to post this, or who can moderate this or host this with me. And so it's really been a big part of, I think, a sort of significant glue to the friendship and sort of deepening of it, because everyone knows you get busy and you move on to new projects, and as much as you want to see someone you're crazy about, you don't and you can't. And so I think service has really helped with that.
I mean, that was sort of
Yeah.
one of the inspirations for it, is why are we still so close after 25 years? And 100%, it is service. That is what brought us back together over time. And it still does. I mean, it still brings us back together. We were just at like the All Rise conference in May, and, Mary was there, Martin was there, Dulé, did a whole bunch of videos for it. So we really do get together to do that. And somehow it's even more fun when we do that.
Service is more fun with friends.
I would love to hear a bit about the service that, well, let's start with Martin, since you were talking about Martin. How he got you involved, Melissa, with Justice for Vets, and how you first came to working with him, but also the example that he kind of set for the entire show, which wasn't just the example of lovely story in here about shaking hands with everyone, but the example of service, because of the kind of man he is.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have so many stories about Martin, because he is as good as you hope that he is. He's even better. I mean, he really is truly sort of one of our heroes in life. And he models service for all of us. And it's just who he is. It's how he lives his life. It's how he walks through the world. And
Like on Mondays, everyone would be like, "What'd you do this weekend?" And he's like, "Well, I got out of jail on Sunday." You know, everyone else went to a premiere.
because he was
did something silly.
protesting, and
He was arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he came right before COVID in January, I think it was. He's like, "Oh, Janet and I are coming to LA. I mean, to DC.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm going to get arrested with Jane Fonda for Fire Drill Fridays." And I'm like, "Oh, come stay at my house." So they stayed at my house.
Melissa drove the getaway car.
I did.
She
Janet and I
sprung him from jail. It's so cool.
Yeah, and we had like snacks in the car for the waiting for him and stuff. But that's Martin. He just walks the walk. He's willing to do it. And you know, there's a story in the book. It was one of my very first days at work, and you know, there were background artists in this scene, many of them, and you know, I'm sure many of you know background artists in Hollywood don't get treated very well on sets, generally speaking. But ultimately, that was not true on our set because of Martin. And he came on set, and it was time to go. There were multiple background artists, and you know, you see the producers are over here, and Martin walks on, and we're all ready to go. And he stops and shakes the hand of each and every background artist, introduces himself, says how we're so happy you're here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
But it's more, it's like, where are you from? And then
Yeah.
and then he's in a conversation about Cincinnati, and you're like, whoa, you know, he
And they
really
build
is
it.
present with people in a real lovely way. Always.
And it just really was a lesson, I think, for all of us. Not that he chose to do a lesson. It's just who he is. He'd do it right here if he came in, but because that's who he is. But I think it really set a tone for the entire series. And I think that was another piece of why we're still friends, because background artists also get different food on a set than the other actors and eat in a different place. And Martin went to the producers and said, you know, we all have to eat together because families eat together. It really did become a family.
I also love the story about Vegas. You guys going to Vegas. Didn't he take big busloads of people, including the
No, it was for background. It was for the background
Anyone
artists.
could go, crew or cast, but he really specifically
for the background?
yeah, would take the entire recurring cast of background actors to Vegas, like a all expense
Paid for.
weekend, paid for weekend with shows and on the way down, and on the way down.
The bingo bus. They
Bingo,
played
but they
bingo
played
for
bingo
real
so they could-
money. Like it was
yeah,
his money. It was
proper
real money
money.
and prizes. So that people
And
would have
then on
walking
the way
around
home,
money.
he would play it again so that they could all go home with some money in case
Yeah.
they'd lost money, and just
I mean,
so
just
sweet.
a thoughtful and sweet, good man. And for this book, he shows up for everything for us. He's been the most supportive. He read it, and I don't think he had any idea that it was going to be a real book when we were, you know, interviewing him. I really don't. We interviewed him several times. The first interview we did, remember, he said, "Did we really?" Because we were just chatting, and he said, "Did we really get to any of your questions?" And we're like, not really. So we like, but it was just so fun. And then he called after he read it a few weeks before the publication date, and we didn't let him read it before that because we dedicated a whole chapter to him, and he's so humble he would have made us take it out. So we wanted to wait till it was too late. But he called and said, he's like, "There were so many stories in here. Even I didn't know. I love it. How can I help you?" And he's been more excited about this, I think, than even we are almost.
Like a proud dad,
I know.
right?
Yes.
That was the vibe I got. Yeah.
We
Okay.
called Martin and John. They were like the parents of the cast. They were older and wiser and kind and professional, and we all learned a lot from them.
There's sort of sweet romance there too. That's always.
Now I look at that and I'm like, wait, they were young.
Martin was
I'm not
exactly
kidding.
my
Now I-
age.
at the time
Yes.
I was like,
Exactly
oh, those
my
are
age.
nice old people.
Right.
And
Same.
now I'm like,
We're-
wait a minute, they were super young and hot
Yeah. We're the less nice old people now.
and less hot.
When I read in the book that I was the same age as the president I started, I couldn't even believe it. It's funny, you were talking about the fact that interviewing him, it was a conversation. You never got to the questions. It's hard to interview people you know, isn't it? Like you have to write the stuff down because otherwise you're going to go off on these
But
tangents.
sometimes you find jewels in that too. We really did. I mean, we were talking about that too. That was another advantage of the two of us writing it, because we'd be in conversation just casually and something would come up and we're like, "Oh, wait a second. Let me just write that down." Or, "Can I record you saying it? Because it's good for a book."
We were so new at it. I mean, we are so new at it. We didn't really know what we were doing. We're not interviewers. So there were times, I mean, I remember we finished Lily Tomlin's interview and she went, "That was not great." She goes, She was like,
She said
you
later.
guys learned nothing. And I was like, we really didn't. Like, we didn't know what we were doing.
She's hardly in the book.
Yes. No fault of her own, but
I don't know, a little. No, I'm kidding.
That's the first you're telling me that part.
We hung up and I called Mary. I'm like, are we really bad at this?
I think we are.
Another thing that I wanted to point out, I'm not sure how many people know this, but I really enjoyed reading the sections of the book about this because this is a very Washington, D.C. and policy and politics place. I think they'd appreciate it too. I remember seeing in the credits very early on a name or two I recognized. So Dee Dee Myers, of course, came up, and you would say, oh, that's why it feels real. That's why the book, or that's why the series felt very accurate, spot on. And of course, there's license taken, but it's, really close. So a lot of us who kind of maybe went in skeptical came out going, oh my goodness, they actually know what they're talking about. But the thing I didn't realize was how many people were involved that were DC insiders, both on the left and the right, which I thought was really fascinating. Did you ever interact with any of those people, or was it just behind the scenes with the writers?
You may have.
Yeah,
You
I
were there
did a little
earlier.
bit, but not, yeah, I think sort of like Allison did a lot. Brad did a lot
That's what I-
especially in the beginning.
To develop the characters,
And
right?
also to learn
Right.
more about it for themselves. And I think Allison's character was based on Dee Dee and yeah.
But then I think it became, certainly the writers used that resource a lot.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fascinating to me when I saw the list of some of the people that I hadn't realized were actually involved in the show. That you'll see, read the book, buy the book, read the book, you'll see. We are very fortunate that although a few people couldn't join us today, speaking of cast members and getting some help, they sent along a little message, a couple messages, inside scoops. And if I'm giving enough heads up to our lovely friends taking care of directing this today, I'm going to show a little clip from a friend of yours who talks about a favorite scene and episode, and then ask you two to talk about your favorite scenes or episodes. So if we can roll that little clip, I would appreciate it.
Everybody, what's left of Josh Lyman here. Don't be judgy. It's been 25 years. I'm so sorry I can't be there with you tonight to celebrate with Mary and Melissa, but I thought I would pop in from Budapest and answer a question from Sarah B. Fly 34. She asks, Bradley, what was the most memorable scene for you to film? Also, could you share some of your favorite behind the scenes memories from your time on the show? It's a great question. It's one I have gotten before, and I always have the same answer to both questions. The episode was Noel. It was this magical day where we were shooting. Yo-Yo Ma was on the set, passing his cello around, playing extraordinary music during and in between takes. And we had done his side of it. And we had to shoot me listening to Yo-Yo play that gorgeous Bach cello concerto that just makes you weep instantly. And Tommy was directing, and Tommy said that Yo-Yo didn't have to play it live because we had captured it, we had recorded it, and Yo-Yo was insistent on playing take after take after take for me, and wanted to make sure that we could make eye contact around the camera while the greatest cellist who ever lived looked into my eyes and played the most beautiful piece of cello music I can imagine. It was a day I am forever grateful for.
I love that because I love it. It was so nice to get the chills. Oh, love Yo-Yo Ma.
His performance in that episode.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Loved it. So if I may turn to you guys, that was very sad and sappy, but whether it's a sad episode or scene or a happy one or something in particular you remember. I'm curious if you have a favorite, either that you were in or not.
I mean, I cherish my work I got to do with John Spencer. I was really lucky in that I wasn't there for a long, long, long time, and I got so much to do with John, and was one of my favorite actors, is one of my favorite actors, but was, even before I joined the show, one of my favorite actors. So getting to sort of the Kate Harper aligning with Leo was really lucky. So all of that work, 90 Miles Away, was like a fever dream, that episode, and all the Camp David stuff was, incredible to do with John. Just, I learned so much working with him.
I'd forgotten about the Camp David.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Melissa?
I mean, I have quite a few favorites, but I think one of my favorite episodes to watch, and I'm not even in it, so I must really like it, is In Excelsis Deo. That I just am very moved by that episode in many ways, and also I think it resonates for me even more now because of the work that I do. But what do we owe our veterans when they come home and they struggle, and the enormous sacrifices that not only our veterans make, but their families, and it just was so brilliantly done by Aaron Sorkin, and then brilliantly acted and executed by everyone who was part of it. But, that scene with Mrs. Landingham losing both of her sons in Vietnam, you just really see the sacrifice, and it's not like spotlight on it, but I just think so seamlessly and beautifully done. And I think we as a nation haven't really come to terms with how we are going to care for our veterans when they struggle.
I love that episode. I have loved for a long time that this is the work that you do. For those of you who don't know, by the way, or don't remember, you have to go back and watch it. It's the episode where Toby has given his coat to Goodwill, and his card is left in the coat jacket, and a homeless man was wearing it when he passes, and it's a vet. And Toby is deeply affected by this and wants to have an Arlington burial. And for me, the scene that really got me was at the very end when President Bartlet calls him in, says, I hear you're using my name, to get this special burial. And he says, I get it, Toby. He kind of says to him, I understand, but please don't do that again, because we're going to have vets coming out of the woodwork. And in Sorkin classic brilliant fashion, he has Toby say, I should hope so, sir. And that's all you need to know. I mean, that scene.
And it's
brilliant.
Richard Schiff, who plays Toby, gave us a really wonderful story about the making of that too, and sort of some insights into the acting. And when we were writing the book, we didn't originally start with the idea that it was going to be a 300-page book. It's almost 600 pages, but because it was interview driven, and we just kept getting more, great stories, and we couldn't not include them in the book. So we didn't start off with doing a bunch of key episode chapters, but we do have key episode chapters because of stories like that. Like, that's one of the key episodes. And, they're sprinkled throughout the book too. And, it was such a great journey for us too, to be able to, because we hadn't done it before, we were able to be pretty flexible about where the direction of the book.
Yeah, I think if we're going to talk about key episodes, which is one of the things I really like that you included so many of those, you could have written something on every episode, but then it would have been Josh's podcast, basically, right?
It would have been like 25 books.
Yeah. But a favorite for me, and I think for a lot of people, is Two Cathedrals. And we're going to show a little clip of it, a setup for anybody who doesn't know. President Bartlet is devastated and angry all at the same time, having being heartbroken and devastating loss. Mrs. Landingham having been hit by a drunk driver, if I remember. Is that correct?
Correct. When
And,
she had just gotten her first new car.
Oh, I didn't remember that, but yeah, first new car. And one of the reasons I picked this clip is not just because I love that episode and know it very well, but it's filmed just up the road, National Cathedral. And there were so many brilliant times. I remember friends trying to get spots as background artists. and they had to show up in like prom gear because it was inaugural dances and balls and stuff. So I remember that very well. But I do remember people being very excited about two cathedrals in particular. So if we're ready, I would love to show that.
Son of a bitch, you know that? She bought her first new car and you hit her with a drunk driver. What? Is that supposed to be funny? You can't conceive, nor can I, the appalling strangeness of the mercy of God, says Graham Greene. I don't know whose ass he was kissing there, because I think you're just vindictive. What was Josh Lyman? A warning shot? That was my son. What did I ever do to yours but praise his glory and praise his name? There's a tropical storm that's gaining speed and power. They say we haven't had a storm this bad since you took out that tender ship of mine in the North Atlantic last year. 68 crew. You know what a tender ship does? Fixes the other ships. Doesn't even carry guns, just goes around, fixes the other ships, and delivers the mail. That's all it can do. Gracias, Tibiago Domine. Yes, I lied. It was a sin. I've committed many sins. Have I displeased you, you feckless thug? 3.8 million new jobs, that wasn't good. Bailed out Mexico, increased foreign trade, 30 million new acres of land for conservation. Put Mendoza on the bench. We're not fighting a war. I've raised 3 children. That's not enough to buy me out of the doghouse. Hey, credo Adeo Pio. Adeo Justo. Adeo Shito. Cruciatos in crucem. Tuis in terra servos nuntias fui. Officium perfecce. Cruciatos in crucem. Eas in crucem. You get Heinz.
So good. I'm sorry. Just makes me want to go back and watch the whole thing from beginning to end again, which I think I've done 3 or 4 times at this point. I remember reading about the folks at the cathedral kind of standing in the wings and watching this all happen in the cigarette. And I love that sort of detail about the filming of this. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I want to be conscious of time. We have another friend of yours who couldn't be here, and I want to make sure I get this clip in as well, who kindly sent in a little tidbit. If you guys have that queued up of the other friend. Okay, thank you. I'm skipping around a little bit, so thanks for bearing with me.
Hi, Mary and Melissa. I wish I were there with you guys, but I didn't want to totally miss out on the party, so I'm coming to you on this thing. First of all, everyone knows this book was my idea, right? You did tell them. Well, at least I provided the liquid courage for Mary and Melissa to come up with such a crazy idea. Okay, the fan question I have here is from @SeanG Smith59. Sean says, hi, Allison. You brought so much depth to your character on The West Wing. What did you find most rewarding about playing CJ Cregg? Good question. Thank you, Sean. Playing CJ was pretty life-changing for me in a lot of ways. It was a huge turning point in my career. I remember leaving the theater, not wanting to leave the theater, but and coming to do television and getting to play such an incredibly strong woman who was clearly intelligent and high-powered, but also very much in touch with her femininity. And it was particularly rewarding, you know, portraying her career growth, because in the early season, she was still learning the pitfalls of her job with the press, navigating conflict with her male colleagues, and trying to manage a personal life. And then in the later seasons, CJ had stepped into the role of chief of staff and was a main player in high stakes situations. And she even got her happy ending with Danny. So I'm really proud to have played a character like CJ, especially knowing, she continues to inspire and resonate with fans even 25 years later. I can't believe it's been 25. Anyway, I miss you all, and congratulations on this great book, Melissa and Mary. I'm very proud of you.
I love that. So can I throw that same question to you guys about these roles and what they meant to you and kind of the legacy of playing these roles? I mean, there were badass women on this show, which was the thing that I remember so clearly when I was watching it, that I hadn't seen that before. That many incredible women in places of power where women hadn't always been, whether it was CJ's role, Mary, your role in particular, was like, wow.
I had a great part. I had a great part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
I mean,
that.
and you played it beautifully. You're so amazing. She's so
There's
great.
something fun about TV. I love this aspect of television. It's different than theater and it's different than film, where you have the entire script in front of you. So you know exactly where you're starting and where you're ending up. But in television, every week I would open up the script and I'd be like, oh, I speak Chinese. That's interesting. I've killed a lot of people. Okay, cool. I've had 3 ex-husbands. What? I love that. I love that. A lot of actors don't like it, but I always think it's really fun. So
Nice
Kate
reveal.
Harper had a lot of that because she had a really secret past. So I think the writers had fun. They were like, what if she dated Melina?
Yes.
You know?
The CIA secret stuff. Was
Yeah,
great.
I'm into it. I
that.
loved it. It's fun.
And I love when you tell the story about how your character evolved. Weren't you staffer number 7?
I think staffer number 2 or 3, but
Watch it.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
But I really just wanted to be part of the show. And at the very beginning, when I first read the pilot, I was like, I don't even care how small my part is. I just want to be part of something that I believed would elevate the conversation about service and public service. And I felt very lucky to even be staffer number 3. And then just over time, I remember Tim Busfield said, oh, you guys are good together. Maybe they'll make you her assistant. And just like, oh, that'd be so exciting to be Allison, Janny's, right-hand person. And then I got a character name, and then I got a desk, and then I got, in her office. So it evolved over multiple episodes. But for the whole series, I was episode to episode, and I was grateful for each and every one. I mean, it was such a lucky thing. And it changed my life, I think. Maybe not the character as much, but being part of this group really changed my life, because I never sort of answered fully your question about, how I got to the work I'm doing now, but it was Martin Sheen. I lost a dear friend to addiction, and Martin knew and invited me to join him to speak at the national conference of the organization called All Rise. And I fell in love with the work that they were doing, advancing justice system reform for individuals impacted by substance use, mental health disorders, promoting treatment and recovery support instead of incarceration. They had just launched their veterans division, Justice for Vets, and I was producing a documentary on returning vets at that same time, struggling with post-traumatic stress. And so I just became a supporter. I felt that the work that they were doing was so critical, especially around veterans in the justice system who are struggling. And about 2 years later, they called and said, hey, we're looking for a new senior director of justice for vets, if you know anybody. And I said, if I were a veteran, I'd throw my hat in the ring. And I was sitting in my place in LA, and they called back 2 days later and said, were you serious? And I just said, yes. And they said, well, when can you start? And it was October. And I said, well, how about January? And they said, well, how about Monday? And I said, how about January? And they said, how about Monday? And I started Monday. And it'll be 11 years in about a month. So I've been there for 11 years. And I could not do the work that I do in the way that I do it without the support of Mary McCormack and the rest of the cast. They've shown up for us in ways that I can't even express in words. And
it's pretty easy to show up for this work, though. I mean, if you've ever, even as she explains it, you're like, well, yes, obviously, it's incredible work. And then once you get involved and you see it up close, it is the most moving thing in the world to watch people get a second chance that they've earned and deserve. and
And
you know,
thrive.
and it has bipartisan support because they work, they save money, they hold people accountable, but in the right way. It is everything good. It is all good. So Melissa is sort of our spiritual leader. We all follow her around. Alice and Janney always used to joke that on the show she was Carol's boss, but in real life Carol's her boss.
I also
true for all
remember,
of us.
wasn't it Bradley Whitford that said, you guys are so bossy, he has to do whatever you tell them?
Correct.
To do? Yeah.
Well, I think there are two reasons that made us the two perfect people to write this book. It was the service element, but also the bossy element.
Yeah. I thought so. Are we at Q&A or do I have time for one more question? Or one more thing. One more thing. Okay. I wanted to end on we've talked about a lot of serious things that are very, very important, but one of the things that I loved about the show was somehow it miraculously could weave in incredible humor, silliness, like flat out ridiculous silliness, even slapstick. I mean, there's actual spit takes.
Yeah.
And that wonderful combination kept it from ever getting sort of that laden, overly serious feel. And everybody, it's funny that somebody sent me a message in Slack before this and said, could you play a certain clip? And it turned out to be one of the clips that was available to us. So I thought that was perfect. So for the staffer, I forget who asked for this. It might've been Stefan, but I'm not sure. Somebody asked for the Butterball clip. So I thought we could end on some humor. It seems appropriate. I still don't know how you guys act. I think the hardest thing to do acting is the laughter, and it's really infectious. It's so good in this show. So one last clip, if we may. Butterball.
What the hell is this?
Hello?
How can I help you, sir?
Well, first, let me say, I think this is a wonderful service you provide.
Thank you. May I have your name, please?
I'm a citizen.
I'm sure you are, sir, but if I have your name, I can put your comments in our customer feedback forms.
I'm Joe Bethersonton. That's one T and with an H in there.
And your address?
Fargo.
Your street address, please?
Zip code Fargo, North Dakota, right now.
My street address is 11454 Fruiter Street. And it's very important that you put street down there because sometimes it gets confused with Fruiter Way and Fruiter Lane. It's apartment 23R, Fargo, North Dakota. Zip code 50504.
I really should have given more of a lead into this. For anybody who doesn't know, he's calling the Butterball hotline on Thanksgiving for advice about how to do a turkey. And I love that scene. But the silliness of the show, the joy in the show, the humor in the show that made it so special. So it wasn't just, I mean, I love the behind the scenes of everything in Washington, but it gave you that joy too. And I think if there's one thing I've learned from you is that infuses all of you in this family and this group, and the bat signal and the chain is the joy in each other, and not just in service, but in each other.
So yeah, it wants to be fun
Absolutely.
too. I mean, Aaron Sorkin always says it's just a week dedicated to good storytelling. You know, he also said it's a love letter to public service. So it's both things at once, but I think it has to be both things at once. You know, no one wants to sit through a civics lesson.
Right.
But you're more than willing to sit through a civics lesson if it's a week of an hour of good storytelling.
Good storytelling. And the fact that you all, I read at least 5 different people in the book said something about, we didn't want to leave the set, and they'd never worked on a show where people weren't out. Like as soon as it was done, gone. And it could be 2 a.m. when people finished and you still wanted to hang out with each other.
Yeah,
Which
and
was
it was
pretty-
free cell phone too, which is so nice because now on sets, everyone's like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
You know, young people have no idea. But instead, we would hang out and get to know each other and talk and laugh and connect and deepen friendships. It's really nice.
Truly an extraordinary show, but more importantly, we're going to do questions. I just want to thank you guys because I absolutely love the book. I cannot recommend it
you.
highly enough. Please, please, please. And we'll have some time afterward for some signing, which I'm really happy about, and books available. but I think we have some questions.
Can I just just say
Yes.
one thing? Mary and I were
Yes.
talking
Yes,
about
yes, yes.
the great work that CAP does and that all of you do. And, you know, the show is a love letter to public service. And we feel that our book is a love letter to the West Wing, the army of people it took to create it, and the fans who loved it, and the people who were inspired by it. And you all inspire us by the work that you're doing, because I know the work that you're doing is hard and long, and you could be making a lot more money elsewhere. But we appreciate all that you do for our country and for the world, because you really do lift all of us up. So thank you so much for having us here today.
Well said. She's like the adult.
It's true. It's true.
She's the best. Now you know why she's my friend. She's the best. Um,
Same woman,
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
Well, I'm the lucky one here.
thank you. So, questions.
We are first going to take a question from online and then we'll do questions in the room. So get them ready.
Fabulous.
Ryan asks, what would West Wing be like if it originated, not rebooted today? What would you like to see added or changed in this alternate reality?
Well, certainly, I think we talked about this a lot. Like, I think it would be very different in many ways. And Mary, you can take the second half, but I think the casting would be a lot different. I think there would be more diversity in the cast today than there was 25 years ago. And I think the awareness of that is a really great thing. So I would love to see that addressed in a reboot, and it would be. And then, you know,
What's the second half? That's all I remember.
no, that's it.
That's the right answer.
I mean,
More
that's
women.
that's what
More
I
women
think
of
I
color,
would see.
more women.
Yeah.
Yeah, a realistic portrayal of the White House in terms of diversity, I think, would be a nice change.
I thought that was one of the things I thought was interesting about the list. There was more diversity in the list. And there were some really interesting things. And people thought, oh, well, are we really ready for a female president, et cetera, as they're looking at characters? Like, what
Ironic.
happens. I know. Definitely ironic. All right. So we have a microphone, right, Diane?
Yep. If you have a question in the room, and if you can say your name and affiliation, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Anna Barnes. I work for CAP on that CAP action side. I speak for all Gen Z political junkies when I say thank you for writing this book. I'm often so surprised by the topics that I hear about when I rewatch the show that are still relevant today. I'm curious what you two think is a topic on the show that you think, wow, I can't believe this is still being discussed and debated today.
Sort of every single topic, right? I mean, we have not fixed one thing. So you're next. You're what's next. Good luck. We tried, not very hard, I guess, but we really need young people because we have fixed nothing, right? I mean, guns, F, we get an F on that. Environment, not killing it. Middle East. So yeah, I mean, batter up. I need you
My boss
guys.
is in the room, so I'm just going to say Cap has done some good things.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We're
Thank you.
very
Cap.
proud of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cap. Sorry, I
little
get
thing-
really, I'm like Eeyore, Stormcloud, and then we
little
go over
thing-
here to Melissa. Take it, Melissa.
Little thing called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well done,
which
you guys. Well done.
Absolutely.
on
All
that.
the climate work on that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Started at Cap.
Thank
Very
you,
proud of
Cap.
that.
Thank you, Cap.
90% of our legislative
Sorry, I'm like-
recommendations made it in there.
I'm negative Nancy.
No, no,
You're
no.
not negative.
I'm
It's-
inspiring the youth.
You are. And also, I think it's true. We are still grappling with these enormous issues and problems that we face, not only in our country, but in the world. And it requires a lot of young talent to help solve those problems. So thank you.
I should say both things can be true. I watch the show and say, wow, this sounds like an episode that could have been written yesterday. Because that has happened to me. But some of it is dated where they're talking about healthcare and other things. I'm like, oh, look at what we've done. So there's a few places where I'm particularly proud, especially of getting to be at CAP. So who's next?
Hi, I'm not gonna stand up because I'm in the front. I'm Kat. I work at Brady on our federal policy team. Big fans of Bradley, obviously. As well as the
Obviously,
rest
he
of
stayed at my
y'all.
house when he got your award last year.
That was a week before I got hired. So
Oh,
yay to Brad.
oh,
I guess my question kind of did just get answered. I was initially really curious about, I'm 6 months younger than the show. The show's still really relevant today with youth. I've gotten a lot of friends to watch it that are my age. And so kind of was initially curious about why you think it's resonated, but we did just kind of touch on that. So my second question is, can you give some insight into CJ's Goldfish, how that became a bit
She's
on
doing
the
great.
show? Because I know, obviously we know how it started on the show, but like where did that really come from? And the fact that it was a reoccurring bit eventually that CJ had
Props.
loved
It
it.
was props.
Talk about
Blanche-
set design. Yeah,
Well,
Blanche.
Blanche Sindelaire, props. I mean, it was her thing. She created that. So every episode, and if you have to look really carefully, but every episode in Gail's Goldfish Bowl, there is something in there that reflects the episode. So, and you can see in the final one, we have a picture of it in our book. It said, "That's all, folks," and that was in, in Gail's fishbowl. But that was Blanche. She did it once, and then
We talk about a bunch of examples in the book, which is fun. They're fun to find in the show.
The little Easter
so
egg.
do a little rewatch and look. It's
Mhm.
really fun.
There was one where the president and the first lady wanted some time together. And so Blanche put another fish in the fishbowl. Cute.
Yeah,
That's
and Blanche
cute.
is great. And that was the other thing about the book, that we got to really interview so many people, not just the actors, but we also interviewed like hair, makeup, sound department, props department, set designers. So you really get a full picture, writers, of course, and producers, but you get a really full picture of it. And Blanche was extra helpful. She was great.
The Blanche thing got me. I love that. Right down to the little holes. Anyway, who's next? It's like what's next? I'm saying who's next?
Hi, I'm Logan. I'm at CAP and I also work in digital advocacy. And I was just wondering, you guys have kind of talked about it a little. If you could tell a story now or 25 years ago, you're like, gosh, I wish we really would have told this story, whether it's policy or interpersonal or what would that be and why?
That's a great question. I'd love to hear from you what yours would be.
Yeah. Oh, that's so smart. I love that move. That's a clutch move. That is a clutch move. I'm into that.
Love that.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
me
just-
too.
I'm curious because I think you asked that question. Do you have a strong feeling about one yourself?
I think you guys have already touched on it, just more women in the show. I think sometimes when I watch the show and I'm like, oh, I wish they wouldn't have made that a storyline. Like when Ainsley Hayes comes in and CJ's like, a lot of people weren't on her side and now I am on her side. So I just think that's an interesting dynamic. And it seems like you guys probably felt that a little bit too. So
Do you have any? What would you say? I don't know.
Mine's kind of easy because I would just say like explore treatment courts on an episode. Of course. I mean, I would like to see that because I would like to show that and show people how much it works in an episode. And I think that would be
That would be
actually a
great.
really good episode.
Yeah, that would actually be a really good
Alternatives to
episode.
incarceration and things that actually work.
Yeah, that suits the West Wing.
it does. I like that. Hint,
Hire us.
hint, 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 hint. Anybody? Oh, we have some more. Yay.
This section of the room clearly is the
Wing nuts.
Hi, I'm Murphy. I work here at CAP. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm gonna get partisan for a second.
Buckle up. I'm
careful.
bored.
We
Careful.
can't. We signed a paper. We cannot.
As legally as possible. I think not at all. Okay. I'm just curious your thoughts about the show's treatment of Republicans. As somebody who watched it and then got into politics, it has been sort of the least realistic part of the show. So I'm curious if you have any reflections to
Yeah,
share.
Aaron Sorkin talked about that recently and said in a reboot it would be difficult to do the West Wing because of that, because of exactly your question. The West Wing, if it gets criticism, it's often that it's too optimistic, too hopeful, that Republicans are too reasonable. And that is, yeah, I think that's a fair concern. I think it was a different time. We were all less divided. It was a different time.
I was going to say exactly that. I think people sometimes forget. Yes, it was idealistic, but we weren't where we are now. So
No,
some of
and
it-
a little idealism is good.
I
I think-
like that.
Yeah, I know. It does remind us, and hopefully remind us, it reminds us that is the way it should be, right? That we should be concerned that our policy is going to do the most good for the most people, as opposed to,
Winning.
yeah, point scoring, right? Like that's the way it should be. So I think storytelling and art, if it's doing its job, it should entertain us, and it should also call us to our better angels. It should remind us what we can be, if we're active and we participate.
And I think the good news from my perspective is that, we have all the power. We are here. It's our government. We build it. We place the people in it. it is up to us to do it. And if we're not doing that, that too is a reflection of us and what we're doing. So, and I love that we have the West Wing as a reminder of we can face big problems, but we have to face them together. They're too difficult for one side or the other to own it. We have to work together.
Love that. Optimism.
This is actually going to be our last question.
That's a lot of pressure. Hi, Laura Rodriguez. I run our government affairs department here, Cap Action. I know you've heard this a million times, so I'm just gonna plus one here. People in my generation in their mid to upper 40s, a lot of us were so inspired by West Wing that we came here, like that's what brought us here. And I'm sure you've heard that many, many times over, but I just kind of wanted to tell you that I'm one of those people, and there's a lot of us in DC from all over the country who literally came here because you all made it seem possible. You all made it seem like it could be done, and it could be done well. And that idealism that you were just talking about, that's who we are, right? And so
Thank
you.
God. Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for
you. No, thank you. And that's the legacy of service. Thank
Lovely
you.
note.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. We do meet people all the time who tell us that. And I think it is the nicest thing about having been on the West Wing to hear that so many people like you are up to so much good because of it is like really affirming.
Yeah, we never tire of hearing it. It's our favorite thing.
And I remember very specifically telling you that this was sort of when I asked you if you'd be willing to do this, which thank you again. Having an opportunity to bring an unusual event like this to CAP as a thank you in particular to staff and to people who serve, which was what the show was all about, really meant the world to me. So
Well, it means the world to us too.
deeply
Thank you for
appreciative.
having us.
This seems like a very logical and lovely place to end. So if you can all please join me in a rousing round of applause for our amazing guests. Amazing. My friend. Thank you. And you can tell I'm not a performer because I stepped on the applause. So I should never do that. I should have let it go and go and go. We're going to ask everybody if you could do us a favor and stay seated for just a minute. These guys are going to go out to a little setup we have out there for book signing fun. I highly recommend buying a book. Oh, photos. Sorry. Photos, books, photos. Sorry.
It's both.
I got things wrong. I think they pre-signed a bunch of books, and books are available for purchase, but there's also photos. And again, I just want to thank you all. Lovely to have you. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And please enjoy meeting them, and beer and wine and treats. Have a grand old time. Thanks for coming. Bye, guys.